Welcome to our weekly Bhagavad Gita studies and yoga philosophy. Thank you for being here. We are excited to dive into another discussion today. Jagai Prabhu is here to offer a presentation based on some questions that we've had come up in the last couple of discussions. So thank you all for joining. If you're able and willing to turn your cameras on, we always enjoy that. But if you're not able to, we also honor that. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to you, Jagai, if you'd like to open us up.
Okay. Can I do a screen share?
Yes, I'll do that right now. It should be good to go.
Okay. Let's do this. So I have a presentation. I'll explain it in a minute. Let's do something else first. I hate this thing. Okay. This will be here. So as always, we're going to just do the first verse of the introduction. We always have respect to our gurus and teachers and those who have helped us in our spiritual life and given us the understanding, helped us give us the understanding in our Krishna consciousness. So let's all just say this out loud, those who don't know, and they can just stumble through it, okay? Here we go. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with a torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into this. I do these for a living, so this is how I think. I have noticed, and this is something that's come up a lot, is that especially coming from a Western background, the conception of God is very singular. Means there's a good concept of God. This is what it is. Accept it or not. That's it. Christian, Islam, and such, very one concept. What is God? What's he like? She, whatever. That's who it is, or that's who it's not. But then when we study Bhagavad Gita, can you guys also see me as I'm speaking, like in the little box, or you're only hearing me and looking at the thing?
We can see you in your little box. Yeah.
So now that we're studying a different tradition, a different concept, we see that there's all these different kind of conflicting ideas. There's God, Brahman, which is kind of this all-pervading God. There's God in the heart. There's Krishna. Then there's different avatars. There's Vishnu, Narayan. Then we have Shiva, and we have Kali, and we have different gods and stuff. And some people meditate, and some people chant, and some people perform austerities, and some do pour things in fires, and some people just read books. And so it's a little bit confusing because coming from the Western idea, we just kind of think, do we just kind of pick and choose and fall into a certain slot and it's all one? And we get this idea like all is one means everything is the same. And that's true. And it's also not true. So I don't know if you can see here, this plethora of books. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, coming from Canto 1 all the way to Canto 12. Bhagavad Gita is the distillation of the Vedic truths. Srimad Bhagavatam is like the full buffet of that distillation. So most of our understanding of demigods, Krishna, Vishnu, Paramatma, Brahman, all these different ideas, the Virat Rupa, come from, for our perspective, the Bhagavatam, not really from the Vedas or the Vedanta Sutra. That's very much philosophy. The stories come from the Bhagavatam. So what I want to do here is I want to show how we are in a continuum. There's one God, and that God manifests to us as we manifest to it. But there is only one God, and there's a continuum of, let's say, manifestation of that one same God. Does that make sense? So let me just start here. Right here.
Jage,
Yeah.
can you repeat just the very last bit about the manifestation of one God?
Yeah. So from the Vedic teachings, there's one supreme God. All things are within the one supreme God, and that one supreme God manifests itself to us as we manifest ourselves to it. Means we don't just sit in a blank state and God is dancing before us, begging us to be with him. We're provided so many options to move forward in our relationship with God. And as we choose those forward moving options, God manifests more and more in different aspects of itself. Now, because we're talking about divinity, it's a complicated thing to say that one is higher than the other. Though we say higher and lower aspects of God, but something that is eternal, ever existing, primeval, never born, never dies, is never measured, is unlimited, there is no higher or lower. So let's just keep this in mind. I'm not saying that this one is worse than this one, but I'm saying that there's more of a manifestation of personality. Let's get there though. Okay, so let's start. So when we wake up in this world, and we can see basically without any real any real work that we're a human. And as a human in this world, there are other living entities, trees, plants, fish, animals. They have a capacity, we have a capacity. But there's an oddly distinctive line between humans and all plants, animals, fish. And that's our ability to be self-aware. Now, of course, there are animals that are somewhat self-aware, but that self-awareness of the animals is not enough for them to basically dedicate their consciousness in the pursuit of self-awareness. Like you can put a sticker on a dolphin and the dolphin will look in the mirror and go, whoa, there's a sticker on me. But that's not enough for the dolphin to say, there's something going on outside of matter in this world. So starting with animals, plants, oh, I misspelled this. We find out that we are a human. And the very, very, very first stage of spiritual life, and we're going to use this term Krishna consciousness in a sense, but the very beginning stages is that we are aware of our world. And this would be, an atheist can say that, a scientist can say this. People can say there's something distinctly unique about the universe. It's unusual. We come up with Big Bang theories and evolution, and we have all sorts of concepts. And so from the Vedic teaching, that is a beginning in spirituality, and that's a form of God called the Virat Rupa. And those who spend their time and energy and their heart contemplating the universe and the self, not the spirit self, but the body self, is engaged in a very small worship of God, very small. Now, I just want you to remember three words: Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Krishna, or God, in his fullest manifestation is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. The spirit soul is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat means it's eternal. Chit means it's full of revelation and knowledge. And Ananda means it's joyful and it's happy. Okay, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So let's do a little quiz. I want to make sure we understand this. I'm going to say this a million times. What is Sat?
Eternal.
Truth.
What is it?
Truth.
Eternal. Eternality. Okay. Chit.
Knowledge, eternal knowledge.
Yeah, but not just knowledge, but like revelation, understanding, like
Knowing.
a clarity, right? And Ananda,
Bliss.
bliss, happiness, joy, love. Love is Ananda. Okay. So these three aspects are the core of the soul, the core of God. God is Satchidananda, the soul is Satchidananda. Equally, God is big, the soul is small. That's what makes a difference. So the Virat Rupa is a form of God. And people who meditate on the material world are engaged in a little bit of spirituality. They get a little progress in the spiritual life, even to the degree that Arjuna asked Krishna, show us your Virat Rupa. Means it's a form of God. So as you've gone from, then there's no worship, you're just simply meditating on the world. A biologist, anybody. So as you make now your next kind of like progressive move forward in your path of spiritual life, you recognize, and again, this is the Vedic understanding, that there is a higher, let's say, authority. It's not just random matter controlling this world. There's, and now I've analyzed it, there is order. And within the order, there's prosperity. Means my crops grow, my wife is beautiful, my kids are healthy. How do these come about? There has to be some order. And who's control of the order? I would like to make gratitude to that control so that I may get benefit. Okay? And so that is, from the Vedic understanding, demigods, worship of demigods for material gain. Understand? So the next step from just straight up material concept of the world is that there's a higher order and it's demigods, and they give stuff if I have gratitude. And so in that way, people worship demigods in a million different ways. You could even say, like in a pagan or village life, they do so many things to try to get, rain god, or they give to a goddess of this and that to get things. Okay, does that make sense? Now, once we go through this, I'm going to then go through the Gita and show some verses that show this progress in the Bhagavad Gita, and then it's very clear. And if you have any questions, just stop me, okay? So once you've gotten to the stage, there's the demigods and they're providing, there is a higher authority. Now, the next point is you say, where's the source of these demigods? What is the source of all this matter? What is the source of even my own very self if I'm not matter? And that's where we get into this concept of Brahman, or an impersonal aspect of a superpower that's within all things. Even the source of the demigods, the source of matter, source of the world, source of us, this aspect of God within all things. And this is Brahman. And now we're just starting to understand God outside of matter. Up to this point, the Virat Rupa is God, but it's really like a form of, like a representation, because it's matter. The demigods are like representations of God, but they're not really God. They're just higher authorities, like the police represents the government, but the police are not government. Brahman, this impersonal aspect, is starting to give you an aspect of God. And in Brahman, we have Sat, eternality. But we don't have Chit and we don't have Ananda. So this is an aspect of God, a beginning, awakening aspect of divinity, which is simply Sat, eternality. From the Vedic understanding, and I kind of put this here so that this person here, this human, chants and meditates Om, they gain knowledge, and from that, they renounce the world. This is like the practice of this person. And this person understands the Virat Rupa, they understand demigods, and they understand that higher than demigods is Brahman. And this person here, people may say that they're like an impersonalist, a Mayavadi yogi, a Brahmavadi, like that. And this is a beginning of real, true understanding of God, where God is eternal and through all things, the support. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I wanted to see if you can add something.
Sure.
As you're talking about these different levels, so you've been up to 3 so far. This chart is amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Can you give like a real world example of like someone or something that's aware of higher power, aware of material nature?
Yes.
Like to put it into perspective.
So this first one here, this would be a scientist, philosopher, an atheist, but they're very much attached to the material world. Like if you read the works of Richard Dawkins, full atheist, but his love for material nature is amazing. I myself have gotten tears in my eyes and felt my hair standing on end hearing him speak about the universe, though he says there's no God. This one here would be like, this next one would be like maybe some farmers or some villagers who do some kind of ritual to get rain or grow crops, or they do some home thing to represent something for a good birth, some kind of family tradition that comes down that respects the higher gods, that are giving things like that. Maybe some native traditions, right, that are not saying there's a supreme God who's doing this, but are saying that the nature is giving us, so we respect the nature. This one here is so there's a type of Buddhist that's like a Taoist. Like if you read this book, the Tao Te Ching, this is an exact characterization of this understanding of Brahman. It's impersonal, it exists, it's within all things. You participate in its experience, but it's impersonal. You don't have a relationship with it. You just experience the on-reverence of it. So it's like a type of Buddhist, even though many Buddhists don't accept a high power, it would be a type of Buddhist that accepts like a Taoist philosophy, that there is a power through all things.
Or an ambiguous sort of approach to source. Like Thich Nhat Hanh is a great teacher.
Like Zen Buddhists, exactly. A Zen Buddhist would be a great example of that. Do you have one? Do you have one you want to give, Max, being our Buddhist scholar? You got your hand up.
I just wanted to ask, do you have a quick explanation of why in this specific phase there is Sat, but not Chit and Ananda? Is that coming?
Great,
along?
yeah. So because Brahman or this impersonal understanding is eternal. It's all pervasive. But knowledge starts to give you characteristics of yourself and of God. But with those characteristics, you start to define God and yourself. Those definitions take you out of Brahman and into more Paramatma and the self, and defining who you are and what God is.
Brahman, it's more abstract and general.
Yes.
And so it doesn't have these personal identities. It has the concept of eternality, of like, we understand there's a source. Like when someone says the source or universe or the cosmos, or, you know, we use these phrases, anything but God, but we want to be a little more ambiguous and broad, abstract in it. Those are all ways in which we are talking about this concept of Brahman.
Now, an interesting part, which I forgot to say, is that this cycle of going from animals to human birth and such, it stops when you get out of worshiping demigods or nature, material nature. Once you fall into this category of Brahman, you will not take birth again as an animal. You can take birth again as a human, but to have, once you have a revelation of God, it never goes away forever. It's like it opens a crack that never closes. So once you've understood a bit of God as this Brahman, you can't go become an animal, because there's no animal that has this understanding. You see, but an animal does have an understanding of a higher power and respect. And so you can, from this stage, take birth again as an animal. This is all Vedic teaching. We can do quotes and stuff, but that takes time.
And what if you have an understanding of some type of a God, but you choose not to worship any of it because you don't believe in worshiping anything?
Okay, so I tried to show the chart here, if this makes sense. So this line of this square lines up with this one, but underneath it is a little bit of each of the other representations. So the person who has a higher power and understands God, Brahman, also understands the Virat Rupa, and also understands that there's demigods, and understands that there's Brahman. But Brahman is the forefront of their consciousness. So like a Buddhist who's following into the Taoist understanding does understand that there's material nature, which is controlling things, and there's karma, and you can worship material nature and you can get things. They understand about material, the world itself and the beauty of it, but their forefront is Brahman. Where this person who only worships the material nature, they don't have an understanding of the higher aspect of God. They're only just localized in their space, so they can understand demigods and Virat Rupa. This person only understands Virat Rupa. Okay, so this stack here means that this is the top of this person, kind of this line here starts it, and they understand these other things. So once we move into this one, it will make a little bit more sense. Now, I distinguish this as being yellow. This group here from the Vedic tradition are still in the material world, even at their highest place. Means a Brahman, Brahmavati, fully absorbed in Brahman, can go and merge into this aspect of God and become one with this aspect. But because they don't have knowledge, chit, they don't really understand that there's a distinction between the soul and Brahman. So that place is temporary. And eventually they come back down into the human form. So you can, like when people say, you know, at the end of this life, we merge with God. You do if you wish to, but not forever. It's temporary. Why? Because you and God are distinct. That gets you to this next place where you start to realize, okay, I am distinctively different than God. And now I start to get a little chit. Where are we here? Sat and chit. And this person is, they understand God as God in the heart. And that there's a distinctive understanding. There's me and God is within my heart, which means God is also outside as well, but is now starting to develop distinctive qualities than me. There's me and God. I have qualities, God has qualities. What are they? I'm learning what they are. But I wouldn't say, as let's say, a person who meditates, who understands God is in the heart and that we're separate. I don't have a very distinctive understanding of exactly what God looks like, the qualities of them, but I know that they're there. And this would be somebody who meditates. They chant prayers, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. They say there's God. And this is a very common understanding amongst many Judeo-Christian people who will say there's God. Some will say he's in heaven. Some will say he's Jesus. Some will say that it's Allah, but there's definitely God and there's you and they're distinctive and it's a person and I'm a person. Do they have a face? Some say yes, some say no. Is it an old man? I don't know. Is it a young person? Is it a woman? And they don't know, but they know that that exists. And so this person, this is a new yogi. This is a budding yogi from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna talks about this person who meditates. They sit up straight. They meditate on the Lord in the heart. They don't really know what they're going to see yet, but they're going to get started on this because they know there's more than just Brahman. Does it make sense? And so this person understands God as Paramatma in the heart. They understand Brahman. They understand the demigods, but the whole concept that God is the universe has kind of faded away. Not that important to them.
And we don't discard previous beliefs to now be in this new belief. We recognize that those are stages that we pass through that are the building blocks of understanding, and they're still valid. They're still true.
Yeah.
We're just, this is a really beautiful chart that just shows the progression that we go through on our spiritual journey and the way we mature in our understanding and our questioning of what supreme is.
Yeah, and I want to show you something real quick.
While you get it, I would like to make a comment.
And so to Team Satori's point about what if you don't, worship, right? So to speak. This what Dharma just said makes me think, and with this being sort of cyclical in nature, all this being cyclical in nature and based on time, right? Not linear time, but just based on time from just a progressive standpoint, that we may not, whatever we are not right now, there's a possibility of that not being the case later, either in another lifetime or down the road or in another form, even if that means going back through the animal kingdom, plant kingdom, to circle back around eventually to come into that awareness.
Yes, it's possible. Now, Krishna says that at this stage right here, where you've understood Paramatma, you don't go through the animal kingdom again.
Yeah.
But before that, it's possible. Make sense? Yes.
That's real.
It's real.
There was a quote in the Bhagavad Gita that I don't remember word for word, but it's Krishna was saying something along the lines of, once you have discovered a certain path, or once you become a yogi, you will always find that path in another life again and almost either pick up I guess this is more of like my assumption, pick up where you left off, or just, at least that would be like the beginning stages of your evolution again as a human in
Yes. Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember we talked about this before. And Krishna says this a lot. He has a few verses where he makes this clear. He says, even if you've made a little advancement, a teeny bit advancement, you're freed from the greatest fear. And that greatest fear is taking birth as an animal again. And that line is right here. That little bit of advancement that Krishna is talking about is meditating on Krishna in the heart, making that distinction between you and the divine. Up to that point, if you think you're the divine, you think that you're Brahman. So you have a revelation of Brahman, but you think you're Brahman. You're not actually recognizing the divine. You're recognizing a quality of the divine, but you think you're that quality. So you're not yet in a spiritual path completely, because you still are attached to the self as being the top.
It's like, I love the sun analogy. It always works really well here, of like, the sun rays are from the sun, but you can't say the sun rays are the sun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are and they aren't. The source of the sun rays is the sun.
Yes.
So
So
we
exactly.
think of Brahman in this way, like we are that energy. We're a sun ray of that energy, and we are it, but we're not the actual source of it.
Yes. Perfect. So this line right here, is where we've made a distinction that we are the ray and there's a sun, and we're not the sun. On this side, though there is spirituality and you are making progressive advancement, it's still all about the self as being the supreme, the top. You're not recognizing a higher and that you are a part of it. You're the ray as opposed to the sun. You're saying that you're the ray, but that means you're the sun. So now, moving into this one, this is where Krishna starts to talk about, and if we have time, and I hope we do, I have some verses that I want to click through and just read them in order, and it's just exactly what I'm saying here as Krishna speaks it, and you can see the continuum and where these verses all fit in. Let me get rid of this. That's not tidy. So this is the yogi who's doing their meditation. They're chanting prayers. They're fixated on the Lord in the heart, and they want to now make a connection. They're not exactly sure what they're going to see, but they're starting to make that distinction. And in this place, they have Sat. The best case scenario of this yogi is they have Sat and they have Chit, but they have no Ananda. They have eternity. They have knowledge. We are distinct. There is a God. There are qualities. I understand that. But there's no Ananda. There's no loving feeling yet. There's no devotional connection. That's to come. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's good to sort of terse out, like when you're in this stage, you may feel bits of love and appreciation and gratitude, like you're connecting with that aspects, but you're just barely getting the flakes off the surface of the mountain,
Yes.
You're not, so it isn't, you aren't fully in the love, although you may get appetizers of it while you're in that place. You may get glimpses of it, so it's not like you're unaware of this bliss. It's just our ability to really be connected and immersed in a relationship with that bliss, with that love.
Yeah. You're watching the little video as opposed to being at the place. Imagine you've been to India, I've been to India. It's like a whole zoo. Imagine if you watched a video on India and said, oh yeah, I understand it. No, you don't. So this is like watching the video of God, and then you start to move into an awareness now. Now we're starting to understand. We've practiced devotion by meditating and by chanting. And those are purifying us of our selfishness. And we're starting to develop a connection with a personal God who's in our heart. And now that starts to leak out into the world. The personal God is everywhere. God is in all things. I'm connected to that God. That's an amazing person. And they have qualities. And I read stories now about Vishnu and this and that. And I'm starting to develop this attachment and enthusiasm for the personal God. Just like I'm personal, you're personal. Now the fog starts to clear that God is also personal and is starting to reach through that fog to us. And this is where we have chant prayers, we're in awe and reverence. God is our protector. We seek forgiveness. We're starting to be like, oh crap, like there's the thing here and I've done stuff and God is there as my protector and there's like this, right? So we've moved into this new kind of like awareness of God. And
then in this too, Jag, I'm glad that you said like a development of awareness and a development of all this stuff, because it doesn't mean that, you know, the gunas doesn't matter anymore, or those things that from our past or behaviors or habits or patterns of thinking are just sort of like, they just snap the fingers and they just disappear. It's all really just kind of blending together. Right. It's just that this stuff on this side is starting to take over. And the more we practice, the more it becomes more prominent. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if you see here, this person, this yogi, if you put a line between this box, this highest thing and this one, they accept there's a supreme God who's a person. That supreme God is also in my heart. That supreme God is also Brahman, a fabric through which all things are. And that supreme Brahman also is in control and managing the demigods which affect my life. So my prayers and actions are not completely bhakti. They're not complete devotion. I'm still engaged in karma and works and my dharma and, you know, all these things, but I accept that supreme person as being there. Does that make sense? It's like that's like the awakening of God. And so I've put these two as yellow. Now, moving into green, this is where we actually start to move into, like here it says, this one is Sat Chit and a teeny bit of Ananda. Means we're fully aware of God. God is eternal, has all qualities, and I'm starting to develop attachment. I like to do some kirtan. Though I pray, I'm attached to going to the temple, I give a donation, there's worship, and I'm attached to this, and I like it. God isn't just a big old scary figure. There's starting to become a friendship, little bit of Ananda, because Ananda is joy, happiness, love all together as one package. So as I'm starting to move forward in that, I'm starting to become more attached to my relationship with God, and God becomes less of a big old colossal Lord of all things, but starts to hone down and become a friend here. And so in this state, this is a new bhakta, a new bhakti yogi. And this person chants prayers with some sweetness, some songs about Krishna and God, and seeks a relationship of a friend, not just a scary like God, but a friendship. And this is where bhakti or love starts to kick in. And in this stage, we stop really talking about God, the omnipotent, the big, massive. You see here, Brahman is just kind of a little bit of Brahman, just a little bit, little piece there. And it becomes more of, oh, here, where am I here? Vishnu, but Krishna, avatars, some stories. We read the stories from the Bhagavatam about different forms of God, different pastimes of God, as like Nrsimhadev, the half man, half lion, or Varaha, which is like a boar that, fights a demon, and Krishna and Balaram, how you throw these things and they fight the elephants, and all these different things that start this relationship where you have a friendship, an interaction. Like if I called Dharma and I said, hey, what's up? Oh, I got in this car wreck, but then I fixed my car. Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. And my kids, oh yeah, my kids, they had COVID. See, we have a relationship. We're friends and we want to interact. And so that's this one, the new bhakta. They want to hear the stories. They want to hear the pastimes. And Brahman is still there. Brahman, Paramatma, Vishnu, God, but demigods are pretty much gone. They're not really interested in demigods at all. The material world is happening, everything's happening, but we're just focused on Krishna. And if Krishna wants us to have wealth, then we will. If Krishna wants me to live, I will. If Krishna wants me to die, Rake Krishna, Madake, Made Krishna, Rakeke. If Krishna wants me to live, nobody can kill me. Krishna wants me to die, nobody can save me. So we stop being concerned about the material world, about the demigods and all that stuff. And we're just now, as a new bhakta, we're just focused on Krishna, but we have still an reverential understanding of God. And so our prayers are still that kind of, God and Vishnu, but they're starting to get sweet. So we have this Sat, Chit, and Sam Ananda. And now the bhakta, once we're getting away from our selfishness and we're fully getting to be absorbed in Krishna, that person is now starting to seek a loving relationship, not that interested in Brahman or these kind of things, much more interested in Krishna or God as a person, making a relationship. Okay, material world's great, whatever, material nature is happening. I want to have a relationship with Krishna, God. And the prayers become sweeter, more loving, more attachment, more feeling. And in this place, we have Sat, Chit, and Ananda. This is the fullest relationship of God as the Bhagavad Gita talks about. So from Krishna's perspective of the Bhagavad Gita, this is your top shelf right here. Krishna is the supreme source of all. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Give yourself to Krishna, devote yourself to Krishna. Krishna will protect you. Chant, be Krishna's devotee, and all demigods and all that stuff will be taken care of. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now there's two more stages. These are not part of the Bhagavad Gita, but they are part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, that's where we start to not be so concerned about worshiping Krishna directly. We're starting to lose all this full connection where it's just me and Krishna, but we start to now have that love and relationship with the devotees of Krishna. Those who have a relationship with Krishna, we start to realize, who am I to have this relationship with Krishna? I love the devotees. And from them, I start to hear their revelations, their understandings. And from them, I start to get even a fuller picture of love about Krishna. And I've used this analogy before. If I don't know, Ashriel and I were walking down the street and there was a mural And I said, oh, look, there's a mural. Pretty cool, right? I like it. And Azrael said, oh my God, that was painted by this person that I'm in love with. It. And they go off and they explain all about it. And they show you all the things and why they did this stuff. Now my experience through Azrael of the painting has become much sweeter than just my experience. Does that make sense? Like, for example, I watch football, I turn it on. I don't know anything. I have no clue what's going on at all. I don't even know if ninjas held a knife to my throat and said, name 3 pro football teams, I couldn't. But if I sit with my brother, who is a football fanatic, it's so intriguing to listen to him. He'll say, look, so why don't they just pass the ball for every time to try, because then he get where the ball is and the way they put the thing, why they move the people. And now my experience through him is much more intimate and I have a better understanding. Does that make sense? So our spirituality at some point will not make further progress simply by us trying to make a connection with God and that's it. Once we start to move through the devotees, now we learn about Krishna in a much sweeter way, sweeter pastimes, more intimate, less on reverential. And now this person, the Rag Bhakta, Rag means intimate sweetness, love. They are aware of Krishna and the devotees, not just Krishna. And they sing songs and pastimes. They seek friendship and love and service. And that person sees Krishna, the topmost, as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. Less Sat, less Chit, and mostly Ananda. The eternality of God, the bigness of God, that starts to go away. Though it's there, you see it's there, still there, still there. But the Paramatma aspect is a little bit too impersonal. The Brahman aspect is completely gone. Demigods, nothing. They're starting to focus on, huh?
Before you get, because we're moving out of the blue area, may I ask about the one of the greens?
Yes.
So the aware of a loving God, and then, okay, so the friendship and seeking the loving relationship. So what is your input on if somebody is in that phase, or I'm not sure if that's the appropriate term, but if somebody is in that category where they went all the way up to having that friendship and loving relationship with a source for the very first time, but then they, for whatever reason, decided that it wasn't personal and that you couldn't have a friendship. So then does that mean they go backwards on the chain?
Yeah, so again, this isn't a hard, like there's all bits and parts. Everybody's got little, their own color palette of all these things. And
it may not be a through line. Like sometimes we zigzag all over the place, but in
Yeah.
our minds, we see it as a through line.
You may go a little bit forward, you may go a little bit back, you may fall into your mind and senses and just be distracted from all of it for a while. And then you come to your senses and you say, what am I doing? I love this. And you then dive all the way into it and you get all into it. It's not a treadmill. It's an evolving experience. And each person, there's a verse that says, for every soul, there's a form of God, which is distinctive for every soul. So you have your own experience. I do too. We share it in different ways by discussing, by coming together, and that's how we grow in our own. If we all had the same experience, Sangha would be pointless. And so who you are and what you do and where you come from and how you grow and expand is completely different. Like in the Bhagavatam, it talks about a story. Oh no, it's not the Bhagavatam. I'm sorry. That's the Bhagavatam Rita, which I don't have the book, but it tells of a story of basically what I'm saying, of a person who gets a mantra from a guru, and they become very dedicated in chanting this mantra, that they start off as a complete materialist, and they go through all these stages that I'm talking about. At some point, they enter into the spiritual kingdom right through the front door. And as they move to the front door, they're witnessing in the spiritual kingdom so many varieties of devotees, all with different tastes and interests and mantras and prayers and forms, that there's an unlimited number of devotees. So there isn't just one size fits all. As you expand into spiritual life, there's an unlimited number of devotees with different understandings and tastes. This is a kind of a generality coming from verses from the Bhagavad Gita. And these two here, I'm tacked on just from reading the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, and other stories coming from the Goswamis of Vrindavan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of this kind of next secret stage of raga, or love for Krishna. Like, and we see pictures of Radha and Krishna, and we think, who are they? Do they make out? Do they have sex? Like, who are these two? What is it? So I'm giving a little flavor of what that is and how it relates to all of this. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Reminds me of that movie Soul.
So
and it's going to look different for all of us, like as Jagai is saying, like, you get rid of the demigods, you get, like, there's just no more of that, like I still have deities, morties of different demigods, but the way I orient with them is different. I see them as devotees of Krishna who are much more elevated than me. They are expressions of Krishna in the same way I am an expression of Krishna. I have that same energy. But I know now who sort of, like, I like your term, the top shelf. That just may be a bias in my vocabulary, but like, I want to go to the source of it all, but it doesn't mean that I've just thrown out all the tools that may have gotten me there. Some people do. Like, actually, a lot of the deities that I have, I've gotten from other devotees who are like, I don't want Ganesh in my house anymore because the Gita says I shouldn't worship those deities and I should only worship Krishna. And I happily will take those from them. I don't have the same sort of hung upness about it. I feel like I can have Ganesh and I can have Shiva, but I understand that they are servants, that they play a role in Krishna's big Leela here. And I honor them in the same way that Prabhupada is not my initiating guru, but I still have so much respect and appreciation for him as if he was my guru because of what he's done, because of the role that he plays. So there are different ways that we may not do demigod worship anymore, but it's really our understanding of those things. We mature into new levels of understanding of those building blocks and those stepping stones, which are all part and parcel of the whole experience.
yeah, great. And this is just like a little map, like a little hand-drawn map. You go take the map down to the real world. The real world is full of details and it's very different, but still there's some little understanding, right? So this is just a little map.
Yeah. And I really quickly want to touch on the word materialist, because I think sometimes we hear that in our student mind. We think materialist and we just think like those of us who want material stuff. Like a materialist is somebody who likes to drive fancy cars. A materialist in the sense that Jagai is talking about is somebody who thinks that all truth and eternality exist in the material, in a sense that like that's all there is, just a bunch of atoms that are, you know, organizing in a certain way. Like they just believe in them, in matter being as the end all. So any way in which we're still engaging in life where we are thinking that this material world that we're in, all the stuff made up of matter, is the end all be all, that's just what it is, there's no explanation for it, that's a materialist.
Exactly. Like I was listening to some atheists argue, and one of them said that we are made up of stardust, nothing else. And when we die, we go back into the material nature and again become stardust. There is no soul. There is no proper consciousness. That's all we are. Good for them. That is considered, from the Vedic understanding, a materialist, means their highest is material.
It's not,
Matter.
it's important. I think we get real
Matter.
judgmental of like, that's wrong, but it is like preschool grade level understanding of the world that we're in. And they've just sort of like, that's where they stay, and they don't choose to progress into deeper, broader, bigger understandings of where everything is coming from.
Yeah, and that's
Wait,
a good.
so this like just blew me up for a second. So if somebody believes that they just go back to the stardust, then you're saying that's a form of materialism. It's not necessarily like trying to gain something, but like they only believe that that's the highest level and then they're done. That's what you're saying?
That's what they say.
believe. That's what they say. They believe
they-
Oh,
go back to the stardust, and so because that's the limitation of their belief in material, in matter. We think materialist or materialism is like, we just like to have fancy things and we buy a lot of stuff and we accumulate money and stuff. But in this context, a materialist is somebody who believes that that's all that exists, that there's nothing beyond matter, which are things that you can put under a microscope.
Right? Like if you say a communist is somebody who says communism is the best form of government. So a materialist is saying that the highest aspect of this world is simply matter. We're just atoms that somehow or another came together. Like we say materialist, like Madonna sings, I'm a material girl. She's referring to Rolls Royces and diamond bracelets. So this is what is the ontology of this world. And the materialist says there's no spirituality.
wow, that is huge. That is so huge.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get through these two. Obviously, ask questions. I do want to read, I know there's these verses, but now that we've gone through this, I have this kind of verse list that makes it very clear that Krishna is explaining this continuum. Okay. So then this bhakta is now a new rug bhakta. They're into the devotees. Though Krishna's there, but they're into the devotees. So learning from them, serving them. And Krishna, even service to Krishna, starts to wane. And it becomes the devotees that are the source of their ananda. And you find here that this person, this new person, they still have God and Vishnu is there, Krishna with the avatars. Krishna is the source of all things, but now Krishna is the topmost, is this cowherd boy, this intimate person, less sat, less chit, mostly ananda. And most of their worship is the devotees. And as that person even progresses more in that love, they eventually come to the point where the topmost thing is not just Krishna, but Krishna and the devotees together as one. And that's where we get this concept of Radha, who's Krishna's topmost devotee, who has full love for Krishna. And we put her name first. We say Radha and Krishna. We don't say Krishna and Radha. We put her first. And the Rag Bhakti serves Krishna's devotees and is engaged in the intimate pastimes the pastimes of Krishna with Radha in Vrindavan, and is seeking to develop that sweet, loving, intimate relationship through the devotees. And in that stage, there's still a little bit of Vishnu, Krishna, but Krishna's the source, Krishna's the cowherd boy, and the topmost thing is this loving relationship with the devotees and Krishna in this intimate space. The material world is completely vanished. Demigods vanished. Brahman vanished. Paramatma vanished. All reverential God is still there a little bit, but mostly vanished. And all they have is just a big heart for the intimacy of Krishna. And that's a prema bhakti, raganuga bhakti. And they just are absorbed in Krishna. Yes. Azriel.
You mentioned just now the raga bhaktis are absorbed in Krishna. So for like point of reference, is another example of where like who this a person at this stage might be?
So this is a difficult one to reference because you kind of have to know the like family of devotees to understand who that is. But in our current world, this could be somebody like Srila Prabhupada or like Radhanath Swami or Indradyumna Swami, where they have work, means they do temples and they do festivals and stuff, but they're totally divorced from the material world. They don't care. And then in their intimate life, their japa, their stories, their prayers, their mantras are very much fixated on this intimate understanding of Krishna.
I see. So I got a little bit confused when you said material world is vanished, because
Yeah.
I was thinking if this was like a different life stage, but
Yeah.
I understand now.
I brought into the discussion this term that he's using, material, right? You doesn't mean that you, like, as soon as you become enlightened, you're just like a zombie in a blissed out state all the time, in a trance-like state, you know, and the world is moving around you and you're just in your trance. It's not at all what it is. To me, I really feel like that stage embodies people who are really people who have embodied the concept to be in the world, but not of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like people like that who really are living like that, even 90% of the time, are very rare to come by. To be in the world,
Very rare.
not of the world. Like Radhanath Swami does so many things, but he has not had a bank account in the last 40, 50 years. He just doesn't have a bank account. But
He
yet,
doesn't have a cell phone. Somebody else holds it. If somebody gives him money, he doesn't take it. He gives it to somebody else, and every cent goes to the temple. He personally has no money, nothing. He has a couple changes of clothes because he doesn't want it. He's not doing it to be like, check out how cool I am. I only got 2 pairs of clothes. He literally is not interested. And he works to make the temples and the festivals and the programs a wonderful place for everybody. He internally serves everybody. And in his intimate seva, in his heart, he's here.
he's not of it. He's not like, if something doesn't happen, okay, you know, he doesn't freak out the way we freak out, like, God, I got to pay my bills, but how is that? And how could that person do me like that? Like, he doesn't. I asked Radhanath Swami one time, I said, do you ever get mad? Do you ever get mad? Because I've never seen him mad. I've seen him be firm in certain lectures in a contextual environment with certain kinds of students where he's trying to like really lay down something, but I've never seen him mad. And he laughed, and he has this famous, like, he chuckles his shoulders like this and he laughs. And he said, sometimes I have to pretend to be angry to get people to do the things that I need them to do or that I want them to do. Like, right, like that level of accountability when you have a team of people working to organize things. So he's in the world, but he's not of the world. He's participating, he's doing things. He looks like he has a lot of stuff. He looks like he's accumulated a lot of wealth, but not really. And he's not attached to it. He doesn't get disturbed by it the way we might. He doesn't stress out over it. He's really in the world, but not of the world. And that's what he means by there's no more materialism. Meaning you just don't live in that reality at all. You live in a totally different reality, but you're still here in this body, same lifetime, driving a car, paying your bills, raising kids, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's just you become fixed in this understanding of the impermanence of it all. So if it's impermanent, like the Gita says, then what's the point of having a shift in a mood or an emotion over something that's
Investing,
right?
yeah.
What's the point of lamenting or even being way too happy and excited and joyous, right? That level of attachment, or like down and mad and depressed if an expectation is not met over something that's impermanent. But when you're fixed in that awareness, it's like you don't vacillate, you don't shift.
I liked our discussion about equilibrium in your definition that you looked up, which was how we distribute weight.
Yeah.
And so I've been running with that in my yoga classes around our energetic weight. Like, how do we distribute our energetic weight? And so a materialist is distributing all their energetic weight into the material, like all their investment goes there. And so when they don't get return, right, all their energy, their equilibrium is out on the edges, out on the fringes in the material. But when you fix on what is eternal, which is way beyond the material, but giving life and vibrancy and everything to the material, when you fix your energy in that, you distribute your weight into that, it doesn't mean that you're not involved in the material things. It's just your weight no longer gets distributed. Your energetic weight does not get distributed out into the material because you know it's temporary, because you're fixed in what is eternal.
Also try to understand that this is a very high level.
Yeah.
That we're here somewhere means we don't understand this. And there's demigods like Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Padam Tasmat Padatanam Devi Paditanam Tarastanam. This is Shiva saying, of all the worship, of all the demigods and stuff, worship of Vishnu is the highest. But Devi, who's Parvati, the highest worship is the worship of the devotees. They're higher than Vishnu. And she couldn't understand. They can't understand. They're demigods. How can we understand this? You understand it when you move into that sphere and it becomes self-evident, revealed to us. It's not something that we can just write down and read and go, I get it. Otherwise, it's just calculative. These things come through love, right? Like even you can go to the Antarctica and there's flaming 1 billion penguins there, billion penguin babies. The baby goes beep and the mom knows exactly which one is theirs. Because there's love. How do you understand it? Well, you're not a penguin. You don't understand. When that penguin hears that baby cheep, amongst billions of cheeping, it knows that one's my baby. So we're the same. When we get to that point where we understand Krishna through love, then we understand. At this point, it's like it's over there, and we understand it, and it becomes sweeter, and it brings us like a magnet closer.
It's like
That's
being
the
in
point.
love. Like, you can't explain to somebody like what it feels like how do you know when you're in love? It's like you just know when you're in love. Or even the next level after that is, how do you know unconditional love?
Yeah.
You just know when you are experiencing unconditional love, which happens, I find, mostly through parenting. We really learn. You can talk about what unconditional love is all you want, but to actually know, to have the knowing of what it means to actually do that, you get that experiential knowledge from being a parent, being around children and caring for children. Or maybe you're caring for your parents as you're older. You might have more unconditional love for your parents as you're older than you did when you're younger. But you think you understand these concepts until you're actually in them. And then you're like, oh, that's what they mean when they say that. So we can only understand to some degree, and trying to understand it will actually drive you crazy.
Yeah, it's like the proof in the pudding is in the tasting.
Keep making progress where you are.
Okay, so we got 10 minutes. I would like to at least go through some of these so that you can see how Krishna is directly talking about this. And now you can see that, oh, the Gita is a continuum. It's not just a bunch of jumbled ideas thrown all around. So this verse here says, Krishna says, some look at the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, while others, even hearing about him, can't understand him at all. That would be this person here. This person has, you can explain the soul. They're like, what? It's all matter, right? So then here, then Krishna says, men of small knowledge are very attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation of the heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there's nothing more than this. So from the Vedic understanding, that would be this person here. There's nothing more than worshiping the demigods for material gain. That's it. That's the highest. Does that make sense? So here, then Krishna says, demigods being pleased by sacrifices will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So Krishna is talking about this person who's attached to worshiping the demigods and getting stuff from the demigods. So there's this space in the material world. I've now gotten to the point that there's a higher form of something giving me things, and I have gratitude for that. Then here, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, now I'm gone from the demigods to the self, whose human life is one of self-realization and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated. For him, there's no duty. So this is the person who now has moved into this place where they're aware of themselves, they're aware of Brahman, and they are not so interested in engaging in the material world so much. They want to renounce.
If you missed that, it's the Sanskrit word for self. Notice how it was capitalized S. Is the Atma, like
yeah,
when you are having an understanding that you are a soul, that there is this Atma, this higher self, not myself, Dharma with the dreadlocks, who is the yoga teacher, not that self, like taking pleasure in myself, but like really finding refuge and shelter and knowing that like I have an innermost being that is my soul self, the real me.
Exactly. Now listen to this verse, and look at the Sanskrit. Brahma, Brahmarpanam, Brahma Havir, Brahma Ganau, Brahma Hutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, now this means Brahman consciousness, is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, which is the consummate of in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. That's kind of a weird translation, but this verse is basically saying Brahman is everything. It's all Brahman. And that's this person here. Okay. Now, and I think I just have a verse here just to clarify it. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering sacrifices to them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the supreme Brahman. Means that person is now transitioning into Brahman. And then here we have a verse. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So now you're starting to recognize that there is something else outside of Brahman. I'm not Brahman. I'm myself. There's demigods, there's a material world, there's Brahman, but there's something else which is the source of all of this, separate from me. And then, how are we doing with time? After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the supreme personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. So this person is now meditating on Krishna in the heart, being situated in yoga, chanting Om, and thinking of the supreme, which means in the heart. The next verse is more clear. And these are almost in order in the Bhagavad Gita. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely freed from sex life, one should meditate on me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So this is the Paramatma revelation. And you see we're in the 6th chapter. So we're going up. If you want to say up, we're going this direction. And then here's the transition between the soul. Such a yogi who engages in worshipful service of the super soul, knowing that I and the super soul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances, is starting to recognize that there's Krishna and the super soul, knowing that I, who's the I, Krishna, and the super soul are one, starting to make this distinction. Yeah, we're almost through this. And then a person in full consciousness of me, not knowing, is getting out of the Paramatma, but that there's a personality out there, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor, or a friend, and well-wisher, a friend of all living entities, attains peace from the pains of material miseries. So this person is starting to develop a friendship. They're aware that God is a person, and I want to make a relationship, a friendship with this person. And then I think I did that, this one. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is like prayers on reverential, there's God, there's me, we're separate, I'm doing worship to God. And then this one, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, this form of Krishna, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Now look at the juxtaposition of this verse with those who are worshiping demigods for stuff. I have gratitude, give me stuff, or Brahman, or even God. Like there's this, but this person, they're just worshiping God, and Krishna carries what they lack. They start to have this relationship, a friendship with God, with Krishna.
One of my favorite verses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this sort of precipice that you're at, that delineating line in the progression, is where we go from seeing God as sort of this judge in the sky who either punishes us or rewards us, you know, condemns us or praises us. We shift from that awareness to the sort of the neutrality of God, that God isn't doing that, that actually God has our back, right? Wants to support us, wants us to be happy. And then this verse is just, it's so sweet, you know, when you're not sure how you're going to get through something. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about praying like, give me that's what we do often is like I used to pray to Saraswati before I would take my Ayurvedic exams, like give me the knowledge I need to pass this exam. And that served me and it was real. It was a part of my journey. But now at this point, I don't pray to Saraswati, or I don't necessarily, individuate it that way. But I trust more through my relationship with Krishna that whatever I'm lacking, or I think I lack in the moment, that the universe is going to take care of it and support me in the moment. And that what I have to give and how I'm blessed in a way to contribute to that, those abilities are going to be enforced. They're going to be, often when I'm walking up to the bluff, I will repeat this to myself on days that I'm really tired. And I'm like, I know these people want something inspirational today, and I don't have any inspiration to give because I'm not feeling inspired. I have to trust that Krishna is going to preserve what little bit of strength I have that day to teach, and that he's going to come through and carry what I'm lacking in that moment, and that it's just going to come through. It's all going to work together. And then that really comes from just a place of trusting source and feeling that devotion towards source, as opposed to the idea and concept of divinity that is, being punished or praised, right? Rewarded or scolded, eternally life-giving or eternally hell-damning kind of thing. Like we move from that concept of divinity into this understanding that like that famous phrase of like the universe is a friendly place. That idea, the universe is a friendly place, that God consciousness, supreme, right, universal energy, it is a friendly source. It isn't here to judge us and condemn us. It really isn't.
Mhm. Nice. Thank you, Dharma. Then we have this, which is just full of love and devotion. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, worship me, being completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. This is just Krishna. And then we have two more. Well, this is this verse, which I've been thinking about a lot. And I know that I've talked about it a lot, but there's something incredibly, well, look, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another. Means they're not worshiping Krishna, they're talking. And from their conversing, their kirtan, that's pleasing Krishna so much. The service of the devotees is so pleasing to Krishna, that their thoughts are within Krishna. And then the verse that really, I think these days is probably my favorite verse is this one. Those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love. And that's this bhajan. This is like worship, engagement with priti, love and emotion. So this engagement with love and emotion, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. Means within their heart, he's giving them the Vedas, the knowledge, the everything. They're just engaged in love, and Krishna's in love with them and just showers them with everything they need to get to Krishna. And they don't know about anything else. What should I pray for? What's going on? Everything is being cared for by them. Everything is given to them. All they have is love for Krishna, and they're just like on an escalator straight to Krishna. I think that's good. Well, I mean, we can do the last one, which kind of ties it all together. It makes it almost funny. And that is, that's actually the same verse that we read, but in a different format. Then Krishna says at the very end, this is the last instruction. After all that, abandon all varieties of religion, means forget everything that we just talked about, and just give yourself to me. I'll take care of everything. Don't fear. Don't worry. Make sense? And that's the end of my presentation.
You get 5 gold stars and 10 smelly stickers for that awesome part.
They smell good.
Of course they smell good. Why would I use sticky smelly stickers?
They smell great. They don't taste good though. Don't eat a smelly sticker.
I just got like a flash image of Juggai at like the age of 8 trying to eat a smelly sticker.
I've tried it.
All right, everyone, that was a wonderful class and discussion, and that's a lot to process and digest. Karen Farrell says, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Karen, and Virginie. Nice to have you in the room with us as well. Virginie says, thank you. As always, these are being recorded and will be up on the, I'll have to make a link in my Instagram, but they are available on our website under the studio schedule. So like, if you want to go back and have another listen and review of this chart, you want to go back over it, those recordings will be up there. You guys can go back and revisit these lectures.
Can I share this? Anyone with a link can view there.
We'll put it in the WhatsApp or in the chat right now.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. I don't know how to do that. Here it is. Okay, if you want to check this out, there you go. I don't know how long that will stay there for. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Virginie.
I'm going to try to get it in the WhatsApp for those of you who are like, how do I get it now? I'll try to get this link over there for you. Okay, thank you all for being here. Don't forget satsang at the studio tomorrow with Ed and Juggai will be leading satsang. Where did everybody go? Are you all still there?
Yep.
Oh, wow, you just all disappeared off my screen. Okay. Awesome. Cool.
Okay.
So satsang tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the studio. We'll close with our closing prayers. Panchakalpa
Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Eva Cha Patitanam Bhavyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnava Sadhu Sangha Ki.
Hi.
Bye.
Hi.
All right, everybody.
Okay, y'all.
Thank you all for being here. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.